Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Alright, time to get to the video that I probably was trying to hold off on a little bit. And really, when I seen this video come across my feed, I kind of held off on it because it kind of just, what I'm saying, I already know the truth about, the situation in Libya. And it kind of makes, my blood boil, even though obviously I'm not fucking from, my people aren't, what is it, Libyan or something? Like, I'm not, that's not, but, obviously we're black, what I'm saying? So it makes me just feel some type of way. But, man, today, the video that we're reacting is why America, I'm tripping, why Africa's the United States failed. So, we're gonna see why Africa's the United States failed,
Oh, I love the American Constitution. It's one of the great documents of I bet you thought I was going to say of American history, but no, it's just one of the great documents.
Yeah.
It laid out how the first true, large democratic experiment would work, and it really gets into that spirit which has defined America. The self-determination, the rule of man, the equality for everybody. I know what you're thinking. Let's put it in Africa and see what happens. Because if you thought that, you'd share something in common with those who tried another great experiment of American history, exporting its values and constitution. I'm talking about the first democratic republic in Africa, Liberia. If you want a spoiler, it ended in one of the worst civil wars in modern history and the end of that constitution. Liberia was originally founded as a mini United States on the west coast of Africa, which can be seen in its national symbols, its cultural attitudes, and of course...
Oh my god. Nigga, they eating... Yo. I'm tripping, bro. Damn, nigga, I never... Bro, they eating soul food?
Its form of government.
Chill.
It's also a country that,
bro,
like the
pause.
USA...
Nigga, I'm not finna just skip over that. Nigga, they eating soul food, bro. That's crazy. Is that fried? Bro. That is crazy. These niggas is eating soul food. I don't know what I would expect it, but that's crazy. Yeah.
Its form of government. It's also a country that, like the USA, has always been defined by the politics of race. Imagine this. It's 1808 and the United States has just banned the slave trade. Not owning slaves, of course, only the act of transporting slaves from Africa. A significant portion of the country is made of freed and non-freed black men and women. What do they do now? Sure, many plantation owners saw this population as temporary workers, but they'd been in America for generations by now. Well, a growing coalition of people suggested they should return to Africa and create a new nation. This coalition brought all sorts of people together. Slave owners, abolitionists, clergymen, black nationalists, white nationalists, for all sorts of reasons, like giving economic and political freedom to former slaves, or segregation across ocean lines.
Jesus Christ.
Not even a decade after the slave trade's ban, the American Colonization Society was formed, a group dedicated to the colonization of Africa, aka the resettlements of black Americans to Africa. And it got some pretty big names to join. Henry Clay, Richard Kane, Daniel Webster, Bushrod Washington. Okay, you might not know them, but I swear they were important guys.
I know who Richard Kane and I heard. Well, I don't know these niggas actually. I'm gonna stop capping, but I heard of these men. Bro, why? This is crazy. A black congressman and an important minister, but I guess at the time, it wouldn't I wouldn't. It would be open to black people to be agreeing to going back to Africa, especially to, what I'm saying, because why would they want to stay? What I'm saying, it would be smart to try to stay, in America. But you see, they got fried back in. Bro, this nigga, I'm not gonna lie, this nigga Bushrod looks crazy, bro. And these white men look fucking scary, bro. I'm not gonna lie, like, bro, look at this man. This man looks like the devil, bro. Anyways, man, he looks like a reptilian, man.
You might know Presidents James Madison and James Monroe, though, who were both leading figures in the ACS. Him, while he was president. So this idea had a lot of institutional support within America, with Congress even offering $100,000 for the establishment of Liberia. The first ship to sail over to Africa landed here on Sherbro Island in 1822 with a whopping 86 people on board. Over the next few decades, more and more ships would come over to this area on the West African coast to create their own settlements, buying land from and warring with local tribes. For example, this strip of land was traded from a Gola leader for the price of about $300.
Bro.
And by traded, I of course mean traded at gunpoint. So there is this situation in which black Americans settled on the coast in what would become Liberia's cities, along with some immigrants from the Caribbean and repatriated slaves from captured slave ships, and then local and tribal peoples in what was called the hinterland. In modern Liberia, 16 are officially recognized. Throughout Liberian history, this first group, which would be lumped together as Congos or Americo-Liberians, only made up around 5% of the total population, yet would have almost complete political and economic control of the country. That's because initially the country was founded only for the Americo-Liberian settlers, which there are only a few thousand of. The mass exodus of black Americans to these settlements never happened, especially after the end of the U.S. Civil War. These settlements never happened, The mass exodus of black Americans to these settlements never happened, especially after the end of the U.S. Civil War. So, to make up some size, the ACS merged with some other colonization societies, like this one from Maryland, who joined after they were aided in fighting a war with the native Kru and Grebos. In 1838, the Commonwealth of Liberia was created to govern all of these individual settlements on the coast.
Build a website you love with Wix. For your words.
This settlement, Christopolis, would be renamed to Monrovia in honor of U.S. President James Monroe and become the political center for the settlers. Even today, around a third of Liberians live in and around Monrovia. But ironically, because of Monroe's doctrine of separating the hemispheres into zones of American and European interest, Liberia struggled to get American support after its establishment. The towns struggled to raise the revenue needed to, well, build their cities and fight the tribes which they were constantly at war with. Most of the money they got came from duties, but the British, which had also set up an ex-slave state next door, claimed that Liberia was a society or company or something, definitely not a government. Therefore, they had no authority to collect taxes. So, in 1847, the families of the coast banded together to declare independence from the ACS. They would found the country of Liberia, the first democratic republic in Africa, modeled largely on where many of them came over from, the United States. The Constitution of Liberia was based largely on its parent copy. It established a legislative branch with an elected Senate and House of Representatives, a president who holds supreme executive power, and a judicial branch.
Shall hold the office for 2 years? Oh my God, no! This would be horrible. No, let me stop. I understand they're trying to do 2 years because they don't want a president to it to occur that corruption is being, you know what I'm saying, and then one leader to start trying to be over, take over as a dictator. So they're trying to make it, switch out so there can always be someone fresh in there. But that's if there's gonna always be a person who's with standing to be the president. Cause niggas would be running hella terms, nigga. For a term is 2 years. Interesting.
President who holds supreme executive power and a judicial branch with an American-style Supreme Court. The Declaration of Rights is filled with American classics like all men are born equal, all power is inherent to the people, and it's even got a "We the People" reference in its preamble. Some old throwbacks like you have to be a 21-year-old man with property to be able to vote, and some new hot takes like there shall be no slavery within this republic. There's one small provision tucked away in the miscellaneous editions though. Pull up section 13. The great object of forming these colonies is to provide a home for the dispersed and oppressed children of Africa. None but persons of color shall be admitted to citizenship in this republic.
None but... Oh, look.
Liberia was created only for Americo-Liberians. It says it right there in the Constitution. It also says in sections 14 and 15 that you can't buy land from Native Africans, and the improvement of Native lives is an object of the government. However, neither would become true. The hinterlands were ruled fairly autocratically by president-appointed paramount chiefs alongside Americo-Liberian district commissioners, creating what was essentially two separate legal systems, economies, and societies. The Americo-Liberian population spent the next century and a third monopolizing all the power in Liberia. They dressed differently, talked differently, practiced Christianity, built plantation-style homes, were the bosses on large plantation-style farms.
Oh my gosh, no. They just got fucking colonized. That's literally what they did. That's what, oh my god, no. They just got whitewashed, bro. They just became their masters. That's the problem. Oh my god, no, that was the fucking problem, bro. Do you see this, man? This is not what they were supposed to do, man. Do you look at this? They dress like their masters. They practice their master's religion. Then they build houses like their master. They're literally trying to be just like their masters. You know what I'm saying? Instead of trying to be their own people. And I understand it's kind of hard to try to find your own wave when you find these other people are doing so, what it seems like so better than you. But bro, this is crazy. Like,
built plantation-style homes. The bosses on large plantation-style farms were the only ones.
We're whipping people, nigga. We're whipping your ass. We whipping your ass, nigga. Black people whipping your ass, nigga, because they want to be like their masters. You serious?
Elected.
I'm whipping your ass, nigga. Get back in line.
And because native land recognition wasn't legally respected, the only ones who could vote. Economic power was monopolized with a patronage system, giving true Liberian patriots gifts like iron ore concessions, rubber farms, free labor, or tribal land. Liberia was ruled for a century as a one-party state under the True Whig Party, which was named after the American Whigs, nicknamed the Grand Old Party, and used an elephant as a symbol. At least this part makes sense since elephants actually live in Liberia. Now, legally, they weren't a one-party state. They were a beautiful pluralistic democracy like America. But despite the fact that the True Whigs would actively campaign during election seasons, the result of that election was decided pretty much from the start. Opposition members would be harassed and in some cases attacked and jailed. Both the newspapers in the country were owned by the government, and during the True Whig dynasty, nearly no election was what we would call free or fair. This is probably a bit of an understatement. In 1927, Charles D.B. King won an amazing 230,000 votes in a country where only around 19,000 people could legally vote. That's a 1,210% margin, a strong mandate if I've ever heard one. And don't even think about checks or balances when you're elected. Never during True Whig rule did the legislative branch ever initiate legislation without previous presidential approval, while court rulings were often straight up ignored. Old King wasn't too radical just like most in his party, but he did preside over a bit of a shakeup in the Americo-Liberian world. In 1930, a League of Nations report came out that the government was complicit in what was essentially slavery and a slave trade. They found forced labor practices and worker abuses on the Firestone...
They want to be like their masters, bro. This is crazy. Bro, why would this be even allowed, bro? This is, like, actually this dumb, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? This is actually... And so, bro, I'm not trying to, like, just... Because... Obviously, I didn't live back at that time, bro. So I know I can't talk a lot, living through, centuries or not centuries. Well, it is centuries, but like centuries and generations and so deep down generations of like you know colonizing, nigga, and shit like that. That it's kind of hard for me to say like, oh, bro, you should have just stuck with your religion, bro. You should have just not. You should have, because in the same pact, turning to being a Muslim, it's the same thing. You know what I mean? You're gonna get the same results. The same results. They're just gonna try to have. They're gonna have you in slave trades and shit like that, man. They're gonna have you trying to be like them, and they're gonna get aggressive if you don't try to be like them. They're gonna make you forfeit all your own your culture for their culture, and try to Allah Akbar, nigga, Allah, nigga. Now you're not African, you're Muslim. You see what I'm saying? So it's two flip of the same coin. Penny. Heads or tails. Christianity or Islam. It's the same thing. You know what I mean? So I'm not gonna try to say that what they should have done, and I'm not gonna try to just clown on them, because I know it's one person to just clown on them, and it's another thing to just you can give something that they could have done, even though they can't do shit now because they're cooked, but there's something that they could have done. And bro, I'm trying to think about it, but bro, like a realistic thing, like other than saying, bro, just stick with your religion, nigga. I mean, but this is crazy. This is crazy. And they start practicing slave trade. Whipping niggas. Nigga, get back to work. Get back to work. Get back to work. You see what I'm saying?
Entire companies' rubber plantations, labor for some public works would be diverted to high-ranking government officials and private citizens, and some crew and grebo workers were sent to the Spanish island of Fernando Po to work on cocoa plantations.
Oh,
Liberia
really?
was shunned from the world system, and King resigned from the scandal, marking what would become
really?
the peak of Americo-Liberian domination of society.
Wow.
The president, not after him, but the one after him, was Liberia's longest-serving.
And then look at their names. They don't have no... Look at their name. Charles King. Edwin Barclay. Nigga, what type of... This is European names. These are not even... Like, and then it's not even like they try to like mix it in, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, I'm gonna try to mix some European name with my name, make it a little flair. Charles King. This nigga is literally the name of a European king. Charles King. Are you serious? Are you serious?
And most transformational, William Tubman. His open-door policy flooded the country with foreign investment, which promised to develop the whole country with modern infrastructure, though, to be fair, did help Americo-Liberian businessmen the most, who could benefit from fancy roads to new plantations. And his unification policy was aimed at bringing tribal members into Liberian society. In 1945, the Constitution expanded the right to vote not just for property owners, but hut owners as well, since tribal land was only recognized to be in the name of the paramount chief. This gave the 3 hinterland provinces a whopping 6 out of 39 house seats, whereas before they had to pay to get a non-voting house member in.
Bro, this is the new era of auto-tune.
Shawty want $1 million. So make a wire.
Native Liberians were brought into government jobs and even the armed forces, although even in the government still traditionally worked more grunt labor jobs, making the country institutionally stronger, maybe institutionally weaker, perhaps institutionally different, yes, and a major vibe shift for sure. And still, the trajectories of these two different people were too far gone after decades of neglect towards the tribes. In fact, many resources came from the hinterland, land and labor, but also with the introduction of a hut tax, financial and food resources as well.
A hut tax.
This would be enforced through armed troops, the frontier force which fought many uprisings throughout Liberian history. Often, they'd live off the land, staying alive through the pillage of local villages. William Tubman, great reform.
So, bro, this is crazy. Staying alive through the other. So look, bro, the villages that are already barely staying alive themselves, bro. That's what I'm saying. So like they weren't even self-sufficient, bro. Like nigga, they had to up the fire on the tribesmen.
Reformer died in 1971,
Ooh.
succeeded by William Tolbert.
Oh.
Okay, reformer. It was during his presidency when the entire Americo-Liberian system came to a collapse.
Oh my god.
The first sign of instability was when he raised the price of rice by 50%, both as a means to try to develop the interior and because his family owned the rice monopoly, but this ended in student, then national riots. The rice riots. It's usually a good barometer that a country is unstable when cities get burnt down from increased food prices rather than, I don't know, what we do now. Tolbert was out within a year of these protests, not by resignation, but by bullet. Who was in? Samuel Doe, who orchestrated the coup, executing him and 13 members of his government. One thing about Sam is he was Kron, not Americo-Liberian, and his gang was made of disgruntled tribal members who joined the previously all-Americo-Liberian armed forces. While many in the outskirts were excited to have an indigenous leader, hoping for some sort of deep change in the country's political system, it became pretty clear just a few years into his reign that he was going to do exactly what the true Whigs did, just for the crown instead. Another coup attempt was carried out by Thomas Kiwankpa, who failed, was mutilated by Doe's guards, and dragged through the streets of Monrovia. Doe became increasingly paranoid and autocratic, persecuting members of the Gio and Mano tribes for their supposed role within the plot. As Americo-Liberians fled, bringing suitcases full of hard currency with them, Krons moved en masse to the capital, and in something straight out of Animal Farm, military and government roles were filled with Kron loyalists. Nothing was going to change under Doe's leadership, so the country remained unstable and ripe for yet another coup. This time it was led by Charles Taylor, who was only half Americo-Liberian. He'd previously worked with Doe's government, but was exiled to the US after being accused of stealing around $900,000 from him. In America, because the government supported Samuel's anti-communist position, there was enough diplomatic sway to get him jailed. But somehow, he escaped to be trained in Gaddafi's Libya, sent to Cote d'Ivoire, and started a march on the capital, officially starting Liberia's civil war period, which wouldn't fully end for 14 years with Charles's next exile. Charles led the National Patriotic Front of Liberia through Nimba County, where he picked up huge support, being the people most targeted by the Doe regime massacres. The war he brought was pure chaos, extolling an unthinkable human toll. It's estimated over 200,000 people, 10% of the population, was killed, and 1 million people were displaced. Entire villages were razed. There were mass executions where members of the same tribe would be buried in mass graves, and the widespread use of the war's biggest cultural legacy, child soldiers. The NPFL would go on to control about 80% of the countryside, exploiting tribal divisions on the 6-month journey to Monrovia. During that time, multiple groups had splintered off of them, led by charismatic warlords. One of them was the independent NPFL, led by Prince Johnson. These forces, ULIMO, couldn't even stay together, so they splintered off into splinters. ULIMO K and ULIMO J split along, who would have guessed it, ethnic lines, Mandingos and Krons. And in total, there were...
and that's what I'm saying. I've never understand this. That's one thing that I really don't understand, is that why do us... I never understand the in African people, like African countries, but why do black people, like, in Africa, like, they're so close next to each other in geographical standards. Like, look, do you see how close these two J and K are? And they want to switch because, yo, bro, I'm a different culture than you, bro, so we're really not the same. And I understand, we're a different culture. But, bro, we're really next, like, right next to each other, nigga. There's no real difference, nigga. There's no real difference, bro. There's no real difference. Like, that's what I'm saying. There's no real difference.
There were 7 factions throughout the war. All of these, along
And
with
it
the
would be like,
Liberian
it would be like, oh yeah, Sudan, we're fighting with someone right next to us, bro. Why? Why are we doing this?
Peace Council, Lofa Defense Force made to protect themselves from Mandingo attacks, and Samuel Doe's Armed Forces of Liberia. It seemed like no other intergovernmental organization was going to stop the conflict, so the economic community of West African states tried to intervene through their peacekeeping force, ECOMOG. Their goal was to contain the conflict within Liberian borders for one, but also, of course, to keep the peace. Monrovia had degenerated into a ghost town with looting, killing, displacement, and just general chaos. And throughout this whole ordeal, Samuel Doe was cooped up in his executive mansion, waiting for the inevitable. But when he left the condo for a bit to visit the ECOMOG base, he was captured by INPFL forces and in an infamous case, tortured, lost these extremities, beheaded, all recorded by Prince Johnson. Which I feel like would end most people's political careers in a democracy, but Prince was an elected senator until his death in 2024. Huh.
Wait, am I tripping? Bro. Yo, this is...
Doe was cooped up in his executive mansion, and throughout this whole ordeal, Samuel Doe was cooped up in his executive mansion, waiting for the inevitable. But when he left the condo for a bit to visit the ECOMOG base, he was captured by INPFL forces and in an infamous case, tortured, lost these extremities, beheaded, all recorded by Prince Johnson. Which I feel like would end most people's political careers in a democracy, but Prince was an elected senator until his death in 2024.
Also, bro.
It's so easy to become a podcaster with Riverside. First, go to Riverside and open an account.
Anyway,
when you're ready to
bro,
record, just hit rec.
Bro cut his head off. Nigga chopped his top. And was still able to be, like, bro, till recently, in 2024. Are you crazy? So they love this man. Yeah, this is a man who brings justice. True justice, man.
Finally been able to get the parties to sign a couple of ceasefires. Now, the factions, after a decade of fighting, had been able to come together to create a lasting peace. What the country needed now was trust building, to rebuild its institutions, and a way to mend all the damages that were caused to each other. So, Liberia held its first fair election, possibly in its history, and who won? Huh? Oh, Charles Taylor won, in a massive landslide. Yeah, there's no trust to be built by this. Many Liberians voted for him because they believed fighting would continue unless he won the election. You know, because he started the Civil War and all. In fact, one of the more infamous slogans from his campaign was, "He killed my ma, he killed my pa, but I'll still vote for him." Taylor quickly created an authoritarian regime, just like his predecessors, limiting political freedoms, especially of his less favored ethnic groups, and the economy was not the greatest, as you can imagine, after all the businesses were literally destroyed. The inequality and poverty wasn't magically fixed by the election, and Liberia again slipped into war. This time attacked from the north by the Liberians United for Reconciliation and Democracy, LURD. The only thing on their agenda, the only thing, Taylor must go. They then dropped a LURD turd on the country by doing what Charles had done 10 years before, picking up popular support in the outskirts and marching on the capital. By 2002, they were nearly outside of Monrovia. But like before, LURD split and the MODL launched attacks from the southeastern counties on both LURD territory and the government. This second round wouldn't end until Charles Taylor left. That was the whole point, right? And the pressure was too much for him by 2003 when he fled to Nigeria. 3 years later, after his capture at the Chad border, Charles Taylor became the first head of state since the Nuremberg trials to be indicted and arrested with war crimes and crimes against humanity for his role in the Civil War, as well as his support for Sierra Leone's blood diamond trade and all these other things.
Man.
Since 2011, he has been living here in a British prison cell, so at least that's a good ending. One of the themes of the Civil War period was the attempt of tribal leaders not to change how ethnocentric Liberian society was, but just to place their group in charge of the country. First, the Americo-Liberians built a completely unequal society under true Whig Party dominance. Then the Crons took over for a decade with Samuel Doe's coup, the Guios, Manos, Mandingos tried in the Civil War, and the Lofas in the Second Civil War. Although it's done a much better job at keeping peace and ensuring freedom for most of its citizens, Liberia's history still haunts the country. By per capita output, Liberia is the poorest country on the West African coast, even lower than countries who went through similar situations like Sierra Leone and Cote d'Ivoire. Since 2006, it's practically been a brand new nation than the one that was originally founded 2 centuries ago. The one only for black American settlers and freed slaves. That is unfortunately the definition of a failed state, and it's safe to say after all these years that the great experiment in exporting the American government to Africa has failed. If you enjoyed this video, please do subscribe. It's free and the robots in YouTube's algorithm really do gobble it up. And consider checking out this video next.
That's tough. Shit, we might react to this video next. The world's most divided island, huh? Which would it be? Cause I thought it was gonna be fuck around, be some South Africa shit, bro. But you know what I'm saying? It might be, hey, let's check out next video. Hey, no. But hey, thank y'all for watching, bro. Love y'all. And see y'all next time.